Fox News Alert, the FBI is giving an update at 6 p.m. after a man armed with a rifle rammed his truck into the front doors of a Michigan synagogue. He was fatally shot by a security guard who was injured. Thankfully, no one else inside that synagogue was hurt. And we're getting brand new details on the vehicle that was used. So let's go to Alexis McAdams. She has the latest. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Dana. Yeah, a crazy situation out there in Dearborn, Michigan that investigators say really could have been much worse, as we're learning more about the man that they say was driving a truck with a Michigan license plate, according to federal sources, right into a synagogue. So as you mentioned, through the front door, they went all the way in, drove down the hallway, and now investigators are telling us that the vehicle is registered to a naturalized U.S. citizen from Lebanon who lives in Dearborn, Michigan. So investigators tell us he drove down the hallway and he was still going until an armed security guard stepped in. And this synagogue actually hired this armed security. We're working to find out if they were off-duty police or if this was a private, investigation unit that they had, but they wanted to have extra security because of everything happening in the country. The suspect was taken out. The question is, was he taken out by the armed security guard, or was there an explosive device inside? Because the sheriff, Dana, said earlier in a press conference that there was some type of explosion or fire inside of the truck. So we're waiting for the driver to be identified, but the sheriff says it could take some time. Listen.
He drove in through doors with a vehicle. Something ignited in the vehicle. That's a work in progress. We're, through an abundance of caution, clearing the vehicle for IEDs or any explosives.
And police say the suspect crashed through the building and then drove again, as we mentioned. Investigators say they actually heard those shots being fired. They were able to get everybody outside because there were school children in there. So we're working to get more on that. Investigators are also trying to clear the area, and they believe that there were explosive devices, according to one federal source, inside of that truck. So the investigation continues as the president of the United States, Donald Trump, just spoke about this a short time ago. Listen.
I want to send our love to the Michigan Jewish community and all of the people in the Detroit area following the attack on the Jewish synagogue early today. And I've been briefed, fully briefed, and it's a terrible thing, but it goes on. We're going to be right down to the bottom of it. It's absolutely incredible that things like this happen.
And a short time ago, the synagogue actually put out a statement saying that Temple Israel, which is one of the largest synagogues there, Dana, in Michigan, was the victim of a terrorist gunman who was confronted and neutralized by security personnel, calling them heroes because, as we've seen all across the country, these synagogues are trying to take a soft target like their church and make it a hard target and, try to put more investigators there because they don't know what's going to happen next. Dana.
Alexis, thank you so much, and we will keep a close eye on that story. And now to big developments in Iran. President Trump sounding pretty confident about Operation Epic Fury during a rally in Kentucky.
The threat posed by the terrorist regime in Iran with Operation Epic Fury. And they gave me like 20 names, and I'm like falling asleep. I didn't like any of them. Then I see Epic Fury. I said, I like that name. Let me tell you, we've won. You never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over. We got to finish it, right? We don't want to go back every 2 years. They are pretty much at the end of the line. Doesn't mean we're going to end it immediately, but they've got no Navy. They've got no Air Force.
And Iran's new supreme leader has allegedly released his first statement since taking power. He was not on camera, and he did not read it aloud, but he vowed to continue disrupting the Strait of Hormuz and striking U.S. bases in the region. Meanwhile, President Trump is tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, announcing he will release 172 million barrels. Some Democrats, though, have complaints about that.
Trump is calling for what I wanted him to do 3 days ago, but only after needlessly sowing chaos and recklessness. He's created many more problems than the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will solve.
You're not supposed to tap into your Strategic Petroleum Reserve to solve a problem that the president created himself.
They decided not to move forward on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now they are. They're just literally making this up. And that is what's so terrifying.
That happened. Okay, Jesse, yesterday we said it would be interesting to see if the Ayatollah had some sort of proof of life. Did the statement scratch the itch?
No, it's kind of like Biden. Who's really running the country over in Iran? Nobody knows. We had Petraeus on the show last night. He said we're well on our way to accomplishing our objectives. We've beheaded the leadership and we've completely decimated their conventional military. And it's only been a week and a half. And this is going to be a 4 to 6 week operation, as the president said. Phase 2 will probably be attacks on the defense industrial base. We're already starting to hit drone and missile manufacturing facilities. And then maybe week 3, you'll probably see attacks on more leadership layers, Army, militia, police, and the IRGC. But yes, there are challenges. The drones have been an issue. Although the knockdown rate's been absolutely spectacular, we can always do better. And they have squirreled away some enriched uranium somewhere under a mountain. We might have to insert some operators to go clean that out. But Dana, the Strait is a huge test for the president's resolve. And there's only one way out of this, and it's through it. I mean, we demolished the Navy, but they have this Mosquito fleet, small, fast boats. And these things can harass and clip tankers and cause huge problems in the energy market. And it's a good thing that we have a admiral as leader of CENTCOM, because he knows the waterways better than anybody. So we're going to have to lay waste to these ports, to these mobile missile batteries, to all of these drone hubs along the coastline. And that's not easy. That's going to take a couple weeks to do, but you have to do it. You can't let the Iranians control 20% of the world's oil flow. And a lot of that oil goes to Asia, almost all of it. It goes to our allies, South Korea, Japan, and our enemies, China. If there's any action in the Pacific, war, Taiwan, anything, you got to control the Strait. This is a national security issue now. And if we don't, we lose. We lose face, prestige, power. The president has to see this through now. It's all about the Strait. I have confidence he's going to be able to get it done.
Paul, what can you tell us about Iran trying to activate sleeper cells or even this threat of possible drones off the coast of California?
So think of it in 3 buckets, how we always did doing counterterrorism, right? You have somebody who's deployed from overseas into the country, an asset that is directed by either a foreign terrorist group or a foreign nation, okay, like Iran. Rare for Iran. They haven't traditionally in America had the ability to project that kind of power. They default to nonsensical things like using the cartels to try to get somebody in, et cetera. That is, I'm talking about somebody Iran sort of weaponizes and sends out from Iran. Doesn't mean they can't do it if they put the whole nation behind it. Argentina in the 1990s, 2 Jewish locations, the embassy, Israeli embassy and a Jewish community center, well into triple figures combined number of dead there. Hezbollah, directed by Iran. Second bucket, real quick, are sympathizers who are already here that would be directed by the regime from overseas. That's going to be Hezbollah. That's why the border and how loose the border has been for the last 4 years is such a problem. Why? They're not here as traditional sleeper cells. Iran doesn't have the economy, the trade craft, et cetera, to send a whole bunch of people from Hezbollah and say, sit in America until we activate you. That's not how it works. Hezbollah is a mafia. They make money. They're in all kinds of criminal schemes. They're very powerful in the tri-border region south of America here and in Venezuela until we took them out. So you have to worry about those guys because they're here making money. 50% of their money traditionally comes from Iran. They just lost that. I actually don't think Hezbollah is going to react because they're on the ropes. They're getting banged up in Lebanon. They've lost their proxy and their overhead in Iran. They're just going to want to survive as a money-making entity. Can I say that for sure? No, of course not. I'm not read into the intel anymore. But the last thing are sympathizers who radicalize. That doesn't mean they can't go overseas and get training, et cetera, et cetera. That's the thing I think we're starting to see develop. We're going to talk about it later in the show. We had this thing in Austin. We had these guys in the upper part of Manhattan. That's the toughest thing. Very hard to stop that kind of stuff. This thing at the synagogue.
There's a 4th bucket we don't have necessarily time to talk about, but the cybersecurity issue as well and those attacks.
Iran's good at that as well, but we're pretty good defensively in that area as well.
Okay. Jessica, your thoughts today?
Well, I guess Jesse took our conversation in a break yesterday seriously when I said, why don't we try to be more reasonable tomorrow, both of us, and see how we get along? And you did great, so now I'm going to try to do great.
Wow, okay.
What do you think?
I feel uncomfortable with that compliment, but go ahead.
It's going to go bad now.
Would you like a blow the break? Jesse wants a redo.
No, it's quite obvious based upon what happened last night, and you even previewed on the show, you said the Strait of Hormuz is going to be lit up last night, and it was. And one of those tankers was based in New Jersey. And there are our Gulf allies, obviously, are screaming from the rooftops. We weren't prepared for this. We need more help. India is making their own deal with the Iranians to make sure that they can get their oil out. China continues to get what they need. And we're left thinking, how are we supposed to address this without putting boots on the ground? And from what I've read, all of these military analysts are saying that we're going to have to send people onto the coastline to be able to secure it. And that is the line in the sand for the American people. When you look at the polling, it has definitely shifted towards more support for the Iranian strikes. I mean, MAGA is sold. The days of there's friction over this, that's over. So now it's 85, 90% support. But when you ask Republicans even about putting American boots on the ground in the Middle East again, they're not for it. Democrats, obviously, even much less, and independents. And if that's where we're headed, that's a very dangerous place for us to be, not only from a national security reason, but also a morale and President Trump's administration's perspective. I also think it's short-sighted to just be talking about this as an oil problem. This is a huge fertilizer problem. So 30% of the world's fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Prices have already gone up 77%. There was an Iowa farmer who was being interviewed that I was watching, and he said, we were breaking beforehand, right? Farms are going bankrupt. We've been talking about, we got a bailout, we're gonna need more, and now we have this. So these are people who were Trump supporters, a lot of them. He did very well in rural communities. Has to be exceptionally careful about it. But, you know, ever patriotic and optimistic. I hope that it goes well, but I did not like to see those tankers on fire last night, or that the Ayatollah, you know, maybe it's not him, I don't know, but this idea that we just beheaded the Ayatollah and that's, you know, locked and loaded like a good thing. This next generation is much more of a hardliner, and he has a lot more years to live and a lot to avenge.
Greg Gutfeld, you've got some notes.
I heard the new Ayatollah was in a coma and lost a leg, or as Morning Joe says, sharp as a tack. It's crazy. I'm looking at the price of oil. It's like by the barrel, it's going to hit $140. You're seeing a 42% increase in the price of oil. Fertilizer is jumping. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the beginning of the Ukraine-Russian war. How soon I forgot. But that was the war everybody loved, right? All those people who put their flags on their bios, you know, those are the same people now wondering how long this war is going to last in 8 days. The Ukraine war is now into its 5th year, but you've moved on. They haven't. You know, it's amazing how little they cared about the price of gas, the price of fertilizer, inflation, the strain on the military. And you get this, Iran had like almost 30,000 people killed before this happened, people that were standing up to the regime. You know, it's maybe we should have this might matter more, but it's interesting how the emotion has shifted. The Biden White House pulled us into a war that had far less strategic value and importance than Iran. You know, Russia didn't take the lives of Americans. They weren't taking them hostage. They didn't support proxies who did October 7th. And yet every celebrity, you know, Ben Stiller, Sean Penn, some guy named Mark Hamill, you know, they loved Ukraine. And if you didn't go along with it, if you questioned it, what were you called? A Putin lover. Believe me, I heard about it. Meanwhile, Trump's taken out the most misogynist theocracy around, and where are the feminists? You know, finally, just as you know, I know you guys are being nice, but I don't have to be. Nothing Trump has done comes close to what the last administration did to our country. The Democrats installed a feeble puppet, and they knew it, and the world knew it. What did that do to us? We got 2 wars. Because of that. We had Russia and Ukraine, and then we had October 7th, because they knew that we were handicapped, that we'd lost our will and our way. And within our borders, it was even worse. We went through 4 years of a radical subversion of society through crime reform, illegal immigration. That also handicapped our will. And the world saw that too. They saw us eating ourselves alive, that somehow we were beginning to believe that we were the bad guy. We saw an incredible nation transition into a self-doubting basket case. That was in just 4 years when you had a missing president. So when people talk about a forever war now, we were on a forever road to war for 47 years. You know, every president, Biden included, kicked the can down the road. Instead, Trump, He likes to have a clear desk at the end of every day. You tell him, you can't do it, he's going to make sure he can.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.